In the poorest year, for 500,000 yuan. I pretended to be my sister and took care of her blind fiancé on the day he regained his sight. I left without saying goodbye. The next time we met was at a business interview. I was an unknown intern reporter. He had regained his status and was the powerful young master of the Williams family. He was being interviewed. I heard that during your illness, you owed a great deal to your fiancée, Miss Serafina, who stayed by your side. Are the two of you getting married soon? The corner of his lips curled slightly, and he raised his hand to reveal a ring. Yes, she and I are about to get engaged. His eyes, however, through the lenses, landed on me in the corner, intentionally or not. Before the interview began, there was a lot of chatter in the venue. The young master being interviewed today is the one in charge of the entire Williams family. I heard that his eyes went blind 5 years ago, and he was even expelled from the Williams family. If it weren't for his fiancée taking care of him without leaving, he might have died long ago. Shy. Keep your voice down. I sat aside, barely maintaining a smile. My nails, however, dug deep into my palms. Suddenly, Wyatt, the senior who was mentoring me, turned around. Aurora, go get me a glass of water to moisten my throat. Just as I reached the water dispenser by the door was suddenly pushed open. A familiar figure rushed into my sight, and my mind went blank instantly. In 3 years, Matthew had changed almost beyond recognition. His originally slightly thin teenage figure had become tall, and the lines of his facial features had become more severe. Those eyes that were once misty were now icy cold. Excuse me, he said lightly, looking over with his eyes behind the lenses, sweeping over me as if looking at a stranger without the slightest pause. He walked onto the stage surrounded by several bodyguards. As he passed by me, a faint scent of wood wafted over. I froze in place. A few seconds later, I suddenly came to my senses. The 2 years I spent by his side were precisely when Matthew was at his most down and out. He was kicked out of the Williams family, and his eyes went blind due to a car accident. Of course, he had no idea what I looked like. It's better this way. When I went back with the glass of water, the interview had already started. Matthew sat on the stage, his fingers interlaced under his chin, calmly looking at the whole audience. He was answering those business questions. Suddenly, the side door by the stage was pushed open. Serafina walked in and smiled as she complained to Matthew. Sorry, Matthew. There was something going on at the film crew, and I'm late. She picked up her gorgeous champagne-colored skirt and took a seat beside Matthew. The whole venue fell silent for a moment, and the atmosphere immediately became boiling and ambiguous. Wyatt held the glass of water, turned his head, and glanced at me, as if discovering a new continent. Aurora. You know, you and Serafina look a bit alike. I pursed my lips and forced a smile. She's a famous actress. You think too highly of me. Of course we look alike. Because she and I are sisters. I heard that during your illness, you owed a great deal to Miss Serafina. Here by your side. Are the two of you getting married soon? My throat suddenly tightened, and I looked at Matthew on the stage. He hooked the corner of his lips and raised his left hand, revealing the ring on his ring finger. It was a simple silver ring. It was the one I bought from a part-time job to cheer him up back then. The noble young master of the Williams family, wearing such a cheap ring, seemed out of place, but he seemed not to notice, gently stroking it with his fingertips. Yes, she and I are about to get engaged. As he spoke, his eyes swept across the audience. Intentionally or not, they landed on me in the corner only for a few seconds. Then he retracted them. The microphone was then handed to Serafina. Miss Serafina, I heard that you are currently filming a movie directed by director Liu. He rarely uses new actors. Is there a factor of general manager Matthew in this? She admitted with a smile. Of course. I've always been very confident in my professional standards, but I don't deny that Matthew has really done a lot for me. I completely deserve this preference. Her generous attitude instead won the admiration of many people. Someone asked, can you tell the story of how you and General Manager Matthew supported each other when he was at a lab? The smile on Serafina's lips suddenly froze in the eerie silence. The flow of time seemed to slow down after a long while. Matthew chuckled softly and took the microphone. There's nothing to tell. The memories between her and me are only for the two of us to know. My eyes suddenly felt sore. I clenched the pen in my hand and lowered my head in a bit of a panic. As long as I closed my eyes, I would think of the past in his teenage years. Because of his unruly personality, Matthew had offended quite a few people. After he fell on hard times, some people deliberately came to cause trouble. To protect him, I was pushed down the stairs and covered in blood. Those people were scared and ran away in a panic. I gritted my teeth and stood up, pretending nothing had happened, and walked back to his side. Let's go. Let's go home. But Matthew suddenly grabbed my hand. You're hurt. Let's go to the hospital. I'm not. I can smell blood. His voice suddenly rose, and tears rolled down from those misty eyes, like stars covered in dust. The teenager, not very broad-shouldered, hugged me tightly, and when he spoke, he called out my sister's name, Serafina. When I recover, I'll give you the most magnificent wedding in the world. After the interview ended, the sky turned gloomy outside the venue. The rain curtain was fine and dense. Wyatt touched his pocket and started ordering me around again. Aurora, the memory card is left inside, go back and get it. I trotted on the wet ground. The elevator number jumped to 1 the next second. The door opened. I bumped right into the two people inside. Serafina was slightly tilting her head, talking to Matthew about the trivial topics of filming on the saddle, though he had an indifferent expression. He was listening very patiently. Their postures were intimate. When Serafina saw me, her expression immediately turned extremely sour. I'm sorry, I mumbled an apology, turned around, and planned to take the stairs up, but Matthew spoke up behind me. Stop. I froze in my tracks. Weren't you going to use the elevator? Go ahead. I slowly turned around and deliberately lowered my voice. Thank you, General Manager Matthew. He told me to use the elevator, yet he refused to move aside, just staring at me. Are you also a journalist for today's interview? Why didn't I hear you ask any questions? I lowered my eyes and said, General Manager Matthew. I just graduated and returned to the country. I'm still an intern journalist and don't have the qualification to ask questions. I see, he replied indifferently. And I couldn't tell what he was thinking. Serafina beside him gave me a vicious glare and said, Let's hurry up, Matthew. We still have to meet Director Liu and the others tonight. Matthew finally withdrew his gaze and said, Let's go. I stood alone in the ascending elevator. Lost in a daze after my parents got divorced, my father, along with Serafina, ingratiated themselves with the Davis family and became a son-in-law who moved into their house since I could remember. I hadn't met Serafina 5 years ago. She suddenly found me. I'll give you 500,000 yuan. You take my place and take care of someone for me. At that time, my mother had passed away due to illness, and our family owed a large sum of money. I'd had no other choice but to agree to her. When I met the person, I found out that the one she asked me to take care of was the young master of the Williams family. Matthew. He was also her fiancé who had an accident shortly after they got engaged. A blind man and an outcast from a wealthy family who would want to take care of him, she said with a look of disgust. If it weren't for the bad reputation it would bring, I would have already broken off the engagement with him. At that time, Serafina had just debuted. She landed a good role in a drama, and her career was on the rise. Afraid of being called heartless and ungrateful, she dumped this unpleasant task on me. Matthew had lived a smooth life for 18 years. But then he suddenly encountered a setback. His temper became really bad during the first period when I went to take care of him. I was always sneered at by his cold words. I was doing the job for the money and never retorted until one day. I went to visit my mother at the cemetery and came back a bit late. He started to vent his bad temper again. Serafina, stop acting in front of me. Don't think I don't know that you actually despise me. In your heart you rage, just afraid of what others will say. So he didn't finish his words because I suddenly lowered my head and kissed him. In fact, it was my first kiss. It had no technique at all, and because I was a bit angry, it was more like a bite between beasts. Matthew suddenly fell silent. Even the tips of his ears turned bright red. You. With a bit of malice. I bit his lips again. Then I stepped back a little, propped myself on his shoulders, and breathed rapidly. Did you feel that? Do you still think I despise you? I went downstairs with the memory card to find Wyatt that was very satisfied. Aurora, you're quite diligent coincidentally. There's a dinner party tonight. I'll take you there to meet some people when you're a journalist. Connections are very important. I quickly thanked him. However, when we arrived, I saw a familiar black Rolls-Royce in the parking lot. I immediately froze. Our general manager Matthew and the others also here tonight. Wyatt turned around and winked at me. The dinner party I'm taking you to is the one with general manager Matthew or Aura. Don't underestimate your Wyatt's connections. It was too late to regret now. I could only brace myself and go in with him fortunately. The private room was quite large. Journalists like us, the newcomers, didn't sit at the same table as Matthew and the others at all. Wyatt introduced me to many seniors in the industry. This is the new intern in our company this year. He is a very clever girl named Aurora. Come and say hello to everyone. As a newcomer, I inevitably had to offer toasts by the end. I was dizzy. I only managed to say sorry before covering my mouth and rushing to the restroom. I vomited until I felt like I was in a daze. I rinsed my mouth, splashed some cold water on my face, and walked out. The corridor was dimly lit by a yellowish light. In the shadow by the window stood a familiar figure. My heart skipped a few beats. I originally wanted to pretend I didn't see him and just go back, but as soon as I took a step, Matthew behind me spoke. Each word, in his slightly deep voice, seemed to be interwoven with countless complex emotions. Aurora. My steps forward froze in place. I swallowed hard with difficulty and heard the footsteps approaching steadily. I closed my eyes and voluntarily the footsteps stopped in front of me. And the familiar Aura approached inch by inch. I opened my eyes and saw his deep, sea-like eyes. General Manager Matthew, I said in a low voice, my throat tightening with nervousness. How do you know my name? He didn't say anything. He just stared at me for a long while before straightening up again. Your senior took you around to offer toast. Everyone in the private room knows what your name is. Thinking of Wyatt's loud voice, my face suddenly felt a bit hot. I'm sorry, my senior is very kind to us new interns. Maybe he was just being overly enthusiastic if it disturbed your mood. General Manager Matthew, I apologize to you. I organized my words to explain, afraid that it would implicate Wyatt, so I also apologized to him, but Matthew fell silent again. Under the warm yellow light, he squinted his eyes slightly and looked at me with a half smile. In the eyes of journalist Aurora, it seems that I'm a very petty person. I lowered my head and mumbled, that's not what I meant. The next second, a gold-embossed business card was handed in front of me. You're still in your internship period, right? There's a job opportunity. Do you want to give it a try? When I went back, my head was still a bit dizzy as soon as I entered the door. Wyatt grabbed me. Are you okay, Aurora? I rubbed my aching stomach and said softly, sorry, Wyatt. I had a stomach operation before, and I can't really drink much. He frowned and was about to say something. Then his gaze swept down and landed on the gold-embossed business card in my hand. Eyes widening in disbelief, I exclaimed. Is that General Manager Matthew's personal business card? I nodded. Thinking about the scene just now, it was the legendary personal business card that was extremely hard to obtain and could directly reach him. One should not accept something for nothing. I warily raised my eyes and, not forgetting to mask my voice, asked, for such a precious opportunity, why would General Manager Matthew give it to an unknown little journalist like me? He slightly curved his lips and said, probably. He just took a liking to you. Well, that was very much a Matthew-like reason. During the 2 years I took care of him, I gradually got to know Matthew better. He would show some of his unruly little tempers in front of me. For example, at certain moments, I gritted my teeth, swallowed the faint sounds between my lips and teeth, grabbed his hair, and said, you can't see, stop moving around. Under the dim light, the young man slightly raised his head. The soft bangs on his forehead brushed past his unfocused eyes. He licked his lips. His fingers pressed against my neck. Exerting a bit of force, he softly said, other parts are fine. So you need to be a bit louder. Let me hear you. I came back to my senses and, made up an excuse randomly to deal with Wyatt. The next day when I returned to the company, the leader called me over. He said amiably, "Aurora, get ready for that popular emotional live variety show I'll participate in the recording as a special guest observer." But after I started working, the next episode was going to interview Serafina and Matthew. After that interview, the news of their engagement appeared high on the trending searches as per-show publicity for the program. Fans in the comment section went crazy. They walked through the tough times together and now meet at the peak. What a beautiful love story. It's said that the Davis family's company was on the verge of collapse. But with the strong support of the Williams Group, it has revived. Power couple. If you don't ship it, you're not human. I scanned through the comments quickly and closed the comment section. The host, Luna, was confirming the script while chatting with me. If we can dig out the specific story of General Manager Matthew and his fiancé during those 2 years, the show's effect will definitely be great. I gripped the pen in my hand tightly and softly agreed. I knew every single detail of what had happened during those 2 years better than anyone else, but I couldn't say a word relying on the resources and connections of the Williams family. Serafina was now a top-tier, popular female star at the beginning of the show. The live broadcast room was filled with millions of viewers. Under the spotlight, I heard that General Manager Matthew and Serafina are already talking about marriage. Can you share the journey of your relationship? Serafina turned her head to look at him and smiled faintly. I've never believed those slanderous words about him in my eyes. Matthew has always been the person I love the most. She looked at him affectionately, her eyes so tender that they seemed to be dripping with love. But Matthew lowered his eyelashes and smiled. Liar. Do you remember how you disliked me when I first went blind? Serafina was stunned. Her eyes glanced at me on the side, a few traces of malice flashing through them. But in front of the camera, she could only force a smile and say, I don't really remember. Probably because our relationship has gotten better and better. I only remember the sweet parts when we were in love. I glanced at the real-time bullet comments behind me. Words like, so sweet filled the entire screen. I put down the script, held the microphone tightly, and asked Matthew a question. It seems that you two have some differences in views. Is there some hidden story? How about sharing how you two adjusted to each other? I originally thought he wouldn't say anything, but after a moment of silence, Matthew still spoke. When my eyes first had problems, I was very depressed, resenting the whole world, and I didn't like her either. She went out early and came back late every day, and still had to take care of me during her breaks. One day, she was so busy that she left the fish stewing in the pot and went downstairs to buy salt, forgetting to turn off the stove. When she came back, the kitchen was already on fire. My throat seemed to be blocked by something. In a trance, I seemed to feel that evening again. The high temperature from the fire still lingered in the air. I dragged Matthew out of the room, grabbed his collar, slapped him, and asked fiercely, Do you want to die? My whole body, along with my voice, was shaking. He didn't quarrel with me as he did before. Instead, after a long silence, he asked me hoarsely, Isn't it better if I die? Isn't it also a relief for you? It seemed that at that moment, I suddenly realized that the once high and mighty young master of the Williams family was now just a decadent puppy putting on a show. So I gasped for breath and pushed him into the room. A wall scorched by the tongues of fire was pitch black. I unbuttoned his shirt one by one and whispered, I don't have dinner to eat. You owe me one. He seemed to realize something. Are you sure? The following words were blocked back and swallowed by my forceful kiss. Matthew, I don't think you're a burden. That night, it seemed that the whole world was upside down, leaving only the two of us. And now, he brought up the old story again. The fiancé sitting next to him, so close and intimate, was Serafina. The whole world thought that was a memory exclusive to the two of them. A suffocating sense of bitterness exploded in my heart. At such a close distance, a certain familiar yet unfamiliar aura from Matthew was quietly wrapping around me. Overwhelmingly, but it no longer belonged to me. He paused for a moment, and amidst the applause of the live audience, finally said, I will always remember that the moonlight that night was so bright that it could illuminate everything. I couldn't see, but she talked to me all night long. I tightly gripped the pen in my hand and hurriedly lowered my head. My eyes ached. Because I modified the questions on the spot and brought up many things that no one knew before. This interview was an overwhelming success. By the end of the program, the number of viewers in the live broadcast room had exceeded 10 million. It was the first time that the details of the untold and secret past events of the person in power of the Williams family had been unearthed. Everyone seemed extremely excited. Backstage, Luna patted me on the shoulder and said, "You're truly worthy of being a journalist." That impromptu question you changed on the spot was so incisive that no one could avoid answering it. Just then, when we turned around, we saw Matthew and Serafina approaching. Luna suddenly fell silent. Matthew swept a cold glance over and asked, "Were those questions you prepared today?" I nodded. Serafina said with a veiled threat, "Journalist Aura, you really know how to hit people where it hurts. However, I must remind you that you should abide by basic professional ethics. Don't covet what you don't deserve." I didn't say anything. I just looked at Matthew again. His expression was stern. And he merely said inferently, "Journalist Aura has great abilities. From now on, you will continue to handle the media business for our company." Serafina suddenly looked at me, in her eyes there was undisguised fear and hatred. She stopped me in a secluded corner, her eyes vigilant and full of disgust. "Aurora, you're really insatiable. You clearly took money from me back then. What are you doing back here now?" I looked at her calmly and said, "I've graduated and come back to work." It was just an ordinary sentence. Work? "Aurora, do you think I'm stupid?" But she suddenly went crazy and threw the Hermes bag in her hand at me. "Get out of here immediately. Just tell him that you voluntarily give up the work assignment, or you won't be able to live a single peaceful day." Her Hermes bag hit the ground, and the bag chain unzipped, spilling its contents all over the floor. I ignored it and turned around to leave. Serafina kept her word. I suddenly started to encounter obstacles everywhere. Several work opportunities that should have belonged to me were all replaced by others at the last minute. One evening, just before getting off work, the leader suddenly called me into his office. "There will be a very important annual development conference next month, and you'll be the host," he said. I was slightly taken aback for a moment, and then heard him continue, "It's General Manager Matthew, who specifically requested you to do it." After work, on the roadside opposite the company, there was actually a very familiar Rolls-Royce parked there. The car window rolled down, revealing Matthew's indifferent face. "Since journalist Aura is so curious about my past, why don't you come and ask me in person?" I lowered my head and said, "I have no intention of prying into General Manager Matthew's privacy. It was just for work." "Even if it's for work, I gave you my personal business card, and you could have contacted me to ask." I pursed my lips. "There's no need for that." Because at that moment, I suddenly realized that it had already been 3 years he was General Manager Matthew, who held great power. He was no longer that hot-tempered young man who, after being scolded, would pester me pitifully for kisses and comfort like a little dog. The Davis family had declined without Matthew's acquiescence and connivance. Serafina would never have dared to target me so openly. Perhaps, for him, that past was actually a humiliation he didn't want to be reminded of. I was about to leave, but Matthew stopped me. "Stop." He pushed open the car door, took a long stride, and blocked my way. "Miss Aurora, shall we have a chat?" I hugged my bag to my chest and asked in a hoarse voice, "What does General Manager Matthew want to talk about?" Matthew hooked the corner of his lip. There was a hint of helplessness in his eyes as he looked at me. "How about talking about work?" In the next half-month, Matthew came to find me twice more. We checked several important decisions that were to be announced at the conference. Finally, as if he had just remembered something, he handed me a piece of paper. "The large-scale tourism project that hasn't been announced yet is a direct cooperation with the provincial government. You can announce it at the conference as an exclusive scoop you've uncovered." I was silent for a moment, then took it and said, "Thank you." Wyatt knew about this, untapped, persuading me. "It seems that General Manager Matthew really appreciates you. Why don't you tactfully mention to him how Serafina has been secreting you?" I was revising the hosting script and smiled. "No need. Do you really think he'll go against his fiancé for a strange journalist on the day of the conference?" The venue was packed. The seat in the middle, which should have been occupied by Matthew, was empty at the moment. Amidst the flashing of countless spotlights, I was announcing several important future collaborations of the Williams Corporation. Suddenly, a strange journalist stood up and loudly rebuked me. "Where did you steal this top-secret information from?" I turned cold. "My cooperation with the Williams Corporation is through completely legitimate, official channels." "Legitimate? People like you who use their bodies to climb the ladder don't deserve to say such things," he shouted loudly. "I even have evidence." Someone walked onto the stage. It was Serafina. She stared at me and gently sighed. "Aurora, it's normal for a young journalist like you to be attracted to Matthew. I originally wanted to spare you some dignity. But you really won't give up until you see the consequences." The large screen behind her suddenly switched from the peep-eddy to several explicit photos, and the person in the photos was me. "You sent these photos to him, knocked on his hotel room door in a camisalo at night. And there's even the surveillance footage of you checking into a hotel with your leader." As she spoke, the large screen behind her changed again at the entrance of a dimly lit hotel. My leader and I walked in side by side. "You're such a habitual offender." Amidst the uproar in the audience, the main door of the hall suddenly opened. Matthew, dressed in a suit, strode in and swept a sharp glance across the entire room. His eyes also passed over my face without the slightest pause. My heart suddenly sank. The stage spotlight shone on me, as if it were a kind of public humiliation under the gaze of everyone for a moment. There was a lot of whispering among the audience. "Doing such things. She's simply a disgrace to our profession as journalists. It's so despicable. It's really disgusting. She has no professional ethics at all. She should be blacklisted." I didn't look at anyone. I just stared fixedly at Matthew, watching him look at Serafina. I said calmly, "What did you just say?" Serafina's eyes instantly turned red, and her ears were on the verge of falling. "Matthew, you've been deceived by her. She deliberately disguised herself as an exclusive interview journalist to get close to you, aiming to steal confidential information from you and harm the entire Williams family. Even this opportunity to independently host the launch was obtained through sexual favors." Matthew was silent for a moment and then looked at me. "Do you have anything to say?" What could I say? In Serafina's gaze, I felt her hatred and sense of triumph. Suddenly, I found it extremely absurd. She and I are only 2 years apart. We are full-blooded sisters. After our mother passed away, she and I should have been the only 2 closest people in the world. I curled my lips and gave a mocking smile, clenching the microphone. I said, "I want to say, General Manager Matthew, your fiancé is talking nonsense and deliberately spreading rumors. Because you love her, you are going to watch her distort the truth and fabricate facts. I will write this matter truthfully in the news release of today's launch. The public has eyes. A project developed by such a decision-maker who can't distinguish right from wrong is probably not trustworthy. Whether he was the rebellious young master before or the rumored decisive person in power now, upon hearing such blatant threats, he should be angry. However, in the spotlight, he just stepped onto the stage step by step, standing at the same height. Facing me from afar, he called my name in a very soft voice. Aurora. My heart was suddenly filled with a sour feeling. I didn't want to listen to him defending Serafina anymore. I turned my head aside and said word by word, "All the accusations against me above are completely fabricated rumors. I have only had professional communication with General Manager Matthew. Serafina's fiancé, and there has been no private contact at all." "No contact?" Before I could finish speaking, Matthew suddenly interrupted me. "You gave me a ring, but you don't plan to take responsibility for me." I was stunned and suddenly turned my head to look at him. He raised his left hand, revealing the extremely simple silver ring on his left ring finger. It was made of inexpensive material and the craftsmanship was average. But due to the owner's careful care, it refracted a bright luster under the lights. This ring seemed to drag me back to the memories of 4 years ago. All of a sudden, that day was originally Matthew's 19th birthday. In the first 18 years of his life, every birthday was extremely luxurious and lively. Only this time, he was so down and out that only I was with him. To cheer him up, I took a two-day part-time job during the breaks of revising my thesis. With the more than 200 yuan I earned, I bought a pair of cheap couple rings. When I got back, I grabbed his hand and put the ring on him. Matthew couldn't see, but he could feel it. His ears turned red, and he still forced himself to ask me, "What is this?" I teased him. There was a couple arguing by the roadside and throwing things. I squatted there and waited for a long time. I picked up these rings on Titus like them. "Young Master Williams. Don't call me that." His Adam's apple moved, and he carefully held that cheap silver ring in his arms. "I like it even if it's picked up, because it was given to me by you." He kept his word. In the days that followed, even in the most passionate moments between us, he would still wear that ring and he would ask me in a hoarse voice, "Can you feel it? It's the love you gave me. Relax a bit. Be careful not to get scratched." Only at those times would he show a bit of the arrogance and unrestrained flamboyance that was unique to a young master returning from the memories. Matthew was approaching me step by step. "Speak, Aurora." "There's nothing to say." I clenched my skirt and said in a low voice, "General Manager Matthew, you've mistaken someone. Isn't this ring the token of love given to you by your fiancé, Miss Serafina?" He sneered. "I never said how I got this ring. How do you know so clearly?" As he spoke, he had already stopped in front of me at a very close distance. There was no way to avoid him. There were whispers from the audience. "What does that mean?" General Manager Matthew said that the person who accompanied him through his difficult times was actually that little journalist. "What about Serafina?" "You know, they really look alike." Serafina looked at me with hatred in her eyes, but she had to soften her tone to coax Matthew. "Matthew, don't be deceived by her. This person has always been full of lies and has a history of this." I closed my eyes and suppressed all the surging emotions in my heart. When I opened them again, I could look at him calmly. "Yes, I gave it. At that time, for money, I pretended to be Serafina and deceived you for 2 years later. I took the money and left. I have already forgotten what happened back then, since from the beginning you thought that person was Serafina, and you are already engaged to her. What's the point of correcting the mistake now?" I couldn't say any more. I swallowed the slightly choked ending sound and took a few deep breaths. I put down the microphone and planned to leave the moment I turned around. My wrist was suddenly grabbed, skin touched skin. And the familiar scalding temperature came from his palm. His voice sounded low. "Of course there's a point. You said that as long as I wear the ring you gave me, no matter where I go, you will recognize me at a glance. Does that still count?" My eyelashes trembled violently. I lowered my eyes and hid all my emotions in my voice, deep in my throat. I just gently pried his fingers apart and pulled out my hand. When I looked up again, my expression was indifferent. Forgot. I lied. In fact, during those years of studying abroad, I often thought of Matthew in the winter of his 19th year, when he was about to return to the Williams family. It was the peak of our passionate love period. The winter in the northern city is incredibly dry. Even when kissing, one can feel a slight sting from the sparks of static electricity. I wasn't without the thought of confessing my true identity to him. There were many moments when our emotions ran high. He would kiss my earlobe and call me in a hoarse voice, "Serafina. Serafina. Don't leave me." It was like a bucket of cold water suddenly being poured over my head at that moment. I suddenly realized that from the very beginning, when I came to his side, I had an unspeakable purpose: to pretend to be someone else. Matthew once told me, when I was a child, my cousin ricked me into a closet, locked the door, and I almost died in there. In my whole life, I hate being deceived by others the most. If he knew the truth, would he hate me to the core as well? On the eve of Matthew's 20th birthday, the old master of the Williams family fell seriously ill and accidentally learned the truth of what happened back then. Matthew had been deliberately framed from the start, and even the car accident had been arranged. The Williams family sent someone to contact Serafina, intending to bring Matthew back home. Serafina came to me. She was already a well-known female celebrity. With her chin held high, she looked at me haughtily and said, "Now the Williams family wants to recognize him again. You surely aren't still dreaming of rising to a high position, are you?" Stop daydreaming whether it's the Williams family or Matthew. The only one they recognize is me. Serafina. From the very beginning, you've just been a counterfeit. She took out a check from her bag and threw it at me. Here's another 500,000. Stop having unrealistic dreams otherwise. I'll tell everything about what happened back then. I suddenly looked up and glared at her. Serafina, Mom is your mother too. My mother is the eldest daughter of the Davis family. Who the hell is she? She sneered. Just a prostitute. That day, as the sun was setting, the light was blood red. I lost my temper, grabbed Serafina's collar, and gave her to fierce punches amid her screams. Someone rushed in from outside, twisted my arms, and pinned me to the ground. The glamorous female celebrity stood in front of me, looking down at me condescending. Am I wrong? Take the money and go abroad obediently. Don't show up in the eyesore again otherwise. I'll have people carve all those shameful things about her from back then on her tombstone. She left. I stared at the check that fluttered to the ground. I thought of 2 years ago. Because my mother was ill, our family had borrowed a lot of debt after she passed away. I couldn't even afford a decent gravestone for her. Just then, Serafina got in touch with me. Want money? She scoffed before I could finish speaking. She only raised me for a few days. She's dead. So why should I give her money? I thought she was just resentful and wanted to explain. Back then, she wanted to fight for your custody. It was you who cried and insisted on going with Dad. Of course I wanted to go with Dad to the Davis family. Do you think I'm as stupid as you? Serafina's face darkened, interrupting me. What? Do you still want to keep me here, living as poor a life as you, not even being able to afford a gravestone when I die? I looked at the Serafina in front of me. All the words stuck in my throat, and I couldn't utter a single one on that face, which was 6 or 7 points similar to mine and exquisitely made up. There was nothing but impatience and disgust. The silk dress she was wearing, the diamond necklace around her neck, and the crocodile leather bag on her arm. Any one of them was worth an astronomical sum that was beyond my imagination. She picked up the coffee on the table and took a leisurely sip. Finally, she stated her intention. However, considering we're sisters, if you want money, I'm not unwilling to give it to you. 500,000. You pretend to be me and take care of someone for me. The original press conference venue had already turned into a farce. Seeing the increasingly strange looks people were giving her, some even turned their microphones and cameras towards her. Miss Serafina, is what General Manager Matthew said just not true? Was it really not you, but that journalist named her or who accompanied him when he was down and out? Are all the accusations you made just now slander? She couldn't defend herself and could only look at Matthew pleadingly. Matthew, you know me best. I've accompanied you for so many years. How could I do such a thing? Matthew looked down at her from the stage and smiled. Don't be afraid. Aren't you certain of your evidence? The lawyer is already here. Everything today will be truthfully recorded and evidence will be collected. His voice was gentle and low, as if comforting her. But Serafina was like she had seen a terrifying monster. She suddenly started shaking all over. The press conference couldn't go on. I packed up my MC script and turned to go off the stage. Matthew wordlessly chased after me. It's raining outside. Let me give you a ride. The rain was pouring down like someone was dumping water. After thinking for 3 seconds, I decided not to make things difficult for myself when I got into Matthew's Rolls Royce. I turned my head and saw a hint of hidden joy in his eyes. However, when I took out my phone, I realized that what had happened at the press conference had been live-streamed and was now trending on hot search. Under several topics, netizens were arguing fiercely, so Serafina stole the credit from that little journalist. How could she be so shameless? What do you mean by stealing credit? For a woman like her who uses her body to climb the social ladder, who knows who's lying? I verified it. Those nude photos were photoshopped. Even if it really was her, she was just doing the job for money from the beginning. The job is done. And she's taken the money. What does she have to be aggrieved about? Am I the only one who thinks Matthew is so pitiful? Neither of these two women is any good. They've both been lying to him. Something suddenly seemed to stick in my heart. I quickly turned off my phone and looked out the window. The raindrops were like tiny rivers running across the car window. blurring the lights that were speeding by outside into a jumbled, colorful patchwork compared to 3 years ago. The scenery of this city remains unchanged. However, between Matthew and me, everything has turned upside down at that time. The Williams family invited the most renowned expert to take charge. After 2 surgeries, Matthew finally regained his sight. Serafina hired bodyguards at a high price, who guarded near me 24 hours a day. Taking every precaution, they were extremely afraid that I would meet Matthew and reveal the truth nevertheless. On the day he regained his vision, those people took me to the hospital on their own initiative through the ward door. I couldn't see Matthew, but I could hear his insecure voice. Serafina. Matthew. I'm here. Serafina said in a low voice. I was so worried about you. Her deliberately altered voice was almost identical to mine. Matthew didn't notice anything amiss. He just said unhappily, You said that when I got my sight back, you would be the first person I saw. You broke your promise. I didn't listen to the rest. A sudden intense pain welled up in my heart, almost engulfing my entire being from the very beginning. In Matthew's world, the one who had accompanied him through those 2 years was Serafina, not me, not her aura. Serafina's bodyguards dragged me into the adjacent lounge. Soon, she walked in, her high heels clicking. Her makeup was as exquisite as ever. Only the lipstick on her lips was smudged. Matthew kissed me. He really loves me and can't live without me, she said slowly as she touched up her makeup. You took good care of him these 2 years. But as far as he's concerned, I did all of this. A person of your lowly status will never, ever have anything to do with him. Where are you going? Home? Matthew's voice suddenly interrupted my thoughts. I slightly lowered my head and said, Could you please take me to the company, General Manager Matthew? I still have some work to deal with. Instead of starting the car, he leaned over with one hand on the steering wheel. His expression actually seemed a bit sad. Aurora. Do you really have to call me with such a distant title? His familiar scent, close at hand, mingled with the fresh smell of rain. Coiling around me, it almost dragged me back into countless memories of the past at this moment. I suddenly didn't want to endure it anymore. I pushed him away and looked at him coldly. Then how should I call you? Little Master. Or Matthew? Do you want me to be like 3 years ago, when I got hurt protecting you? And you called Serafina's name to me. He suddenly fell silent. Those 2 years are over. The person you have a marriage contract with has always been Serafina. Your life is back on track. Why are you pestering me again? But this isn't my right track. Matthew looked at me, his eyes gradually turning red. I had never met Serafina before. From the very beginning, the person I recognized was only you. Dense pain welled up from my heart. I closed my eyes, and when I opened my mouth, my voice couldn't stop trembling. You're still lying to me. Matthew. On the day you regained your sight, I was right outside the ward. I heard you identify Serafina as me without any doubt. You hugged and kissed her. He suddenly interrupted me. I didn't. The moment I opened my eyes, I knew she wasn't you. I was suddenly stunned. I heard Matthew's seemingly calm voice. The situation in the Williams family is very complicated. In that ward that day, there were more than one person with malicious intentions, monsters who wanted to kill me. So the moment I realized she wasn't you, I made a decision. Serafina was the best, the perfect target. He lifted the corner of his mouth, and a cold smile appeared in his eyes. She likes to impersonate, doesn't she? Then let her do it to the fullest. Suddenly, some scenes from news reports flashed through my mind. I saw them when I was studying abroad. It said that Serafina encountered a real explosion while filming and almost died in the fire. It also said that when she was traveling with Matthew, a huge billboard fell on her and she was almost critically injured. I didn't mean not to recognize you. In these 3 years, actually a lot has happened. After Grandpa passed away, one member of the Williams family after another jumped out, trying to kill me. But now they're either in prison or in the underworld. Among them, there's even my own biological mother. Actually, I'm not really afraid of death. When my cousin went crazy and stabbed me with a knife as he was forced to give up all his shares, I didn't feel the pain. At that moment, I just missed you so much. The parking lot was quiet all around. Under the dim car lights, he took off his suit and then buttoned his white shirt one by one, revealing the scar near his heart on his chest. The Williams family is too chaotic. It's not that easy to get. But it doesn't matter after today. Serafina and the last forces that supported her to rise should also fall. The entire Williams family, including me, can be yours. He slowly approached and stared at me from a very close distance. In the past, those eyes were always unfocused and hazy. Now they were so bright that they seemed to hold the stars of the entire universe. I swallowed and said in a low voice, "But you and Serafina have already." I never kissed her. Never. He slightly emphasized his tone. I'm clean, sister. You can check for yourself. With just these words, the rational string in my mind completely snapped when I pounced on him and tore open the collar of his shirt. Countless passionate memories of the past surged up. His low point was also the two most unstable and confused years of my life. Those emotions that were unrestrained and had nowhere to vent in the end. They all turned into our desperate entanglement on the reclined car seat. I grabbed the tie around Matthew's bare neck, just like in countless moments of joy after we had quarreled in the past. I pulled it little by little and tightened it in a faint sense of suffocation. Matthew squinted his eyes and let out a comfortable sigh. I've missed you so much. He held me in his arms, burying his face in the crook of my neck, his scorching palm rubbed gently against the side of my waist. One stroke at a time. They're so stupid. How could that obedient and docile face possibly be you? No one could ever imitate you. His originally cold and sharp voice was now filled with desire by the time everything subsided. It was already late at night. Matthew drove the car in front of a villa. His slightly disheveled tie still hung around his neck, where faint raid marks remained. I took out my phone and saw the news on the trending list with a bright red trending label. Serafina taken away for investigation last month. My half-brother contacted her. He threatened her with the knowledge of her secret, forcing her to steal the tender documents and other confidential files from me. I was silent for a moment and then said softly, I know. You know. Matthew suddenly turned his head. Was it you who arranged this, Aurora? I nodded and pinched my palm, forcing myself to look him in the eye. The reason I came back this time is to destroy the Davis family, to bring down Serafina, and to reverse the case that the Davis family fabricated against my mother 20 years ago. I'm willing to pay any price for this outcome. This is the most important reason why I work in the media 20 years ago. Because the young Miss Juliet had her eyes on my father. She set up a trap to frame my mother, accusing her of being a prostitute and the young Serafina, in order to live the life of a young lady. Actually helped the outsiders. She personally pushed her own mother into the abyss. My mother was detained for 15 days and lost her job when she got home. All the neighbors pointed fingers at her and felt sorry for my father. After my parents divorced, my mother, bearing that shameful reputation, took me unreturned to the countryside in humiliation. She was depressed and passed away due to illness just after turning 50. On the day she passed away, the hospital TV was reporting news about the Davis family. They said that the Davis family had a loving couple and excellent children, and they were even considered a model among the wealthy families. How ridiculous when my mother died. She weighed less than 70 pounds. There were green and purple needle marks all over her hands. She could have lived a long life. The Davis family's business isn't clean either. They've harmed so many people. How can they be called a model? I covered my eyes, forcing back the surging tears. Matthew, I used you because I knew you wouldn't let go of those who betrayed you, so I let her deliberately violate your taboos. If you feel hurt and resent me for this, it's okay, but I must send her to hell with my own hands. I suppressed all my emotions and tried my best to look at him calmly and expressionlessly. But, sister, your hand is shaking. Matthew grabbed the hand I had hidden behind my back and carefully brought it to his lips, giving it a gentle kiss. Don't be afraid. I'm more than happy that you used me. It proves that you care about me. I will definitely stand by your side. I've said it before, the entire Williams family, including me, belongs to you. The matter of Serafina being taken away for investigation caused a great stir on the trending list for 3 days. The Davis family wanted to suppress the public opinion. So they came to Matthew for help. He sat behind the desk after listening to their request. He smiled and said, "What you said is very touching. But I'm sorry. As for how this matter will be decided, it's up to my fiancé." My father, accompanied by his wealthy wife, turned around and saw me. His face immediately changed. I smiled faintly at them and said, "You two should get prepared as soon as possible. Because soon, you'll end up just like her." Matthew held a press conference to clarify his relationship with Serafina. In the face of the questions, he had a half smile on his face. "Fiancé? I've never admitted that she was my fiancé. What I've always been referring to is the one who accompanied and took care of me back then." Someone asked, "But didn't she take Serafina's money to take care of you?" The smile still lingered on Matthew's lips, but his eyes gradually turned cold. "This journalist, I advise you to be careful with your words. There are so many rich people in this world. Why did she only take money to take care of me? Isn't it because she loves me?" The journalist fell silent. I, who was sitting beside him, was also silent after this press conference ended. I released those several recordings from when she came to find me. Who would want to take care of a blind person, especially a discarded heir of a wealthy family? She only took care of me for a few days. People die. And that's that. Why should I give her money? Do you really think I'd want to stay here and live a poor life like yours, not even being able to afford a cemetery when I die? The public opinion was in an uproar. Is this for real? I thought her established image was that of an elegant and generous female celebrity all along. So she or our biological sisters, and she was the one who actively asked the other to take her place. With her outfits worth over $1 million in total, she wouldn't even pay for her own mother's cemetery. How disgusting! Taking advantage of this overwhelming public opinion, I started a live broadcast in front of millions of people. I told the truth of what happened 20 years ago. Miss Juliet of the Davis family had her eyes on my father. They didn't want to have an open and honest divorce. Instead, they joined hands to set up a trap, framed my mother, and made her bear that embarrassing reputation and live a life of shame. Behind me stood a timid man with a crew cut. During my postgraduate studies and internship, I inquired everywhere and went to great lengths to find this man's whereabouts through a senior colleague. He had the habit of petty theft and had been in prison a few times. Miss Juliet instigated me to do that thing back then. That Ms. Moore was indeed innocent. She was tricked by her own daughter into going to the Davis family's wine party after she drank too much. I helped her to the room and stuffed a stack of money under the pillow. Juliet had called the police in advance before my mother, who had been deliberately drunk, could sober up. The door was pushed open by the police, who came to crack down on prostitution. Even now, it's incredibly easy to frame a woman, spread slut-shaming rumors, and brand her as a wanton woman. What's more, it was in that era. I studied media and work in the media field. Not just for this one case. I will devote the rest of my life to clearing the names of all the girls who have been wronged and slandered. This live broadcast added the final fuel to the downfall of the Davis family. From the very beginning, their means of getting rich were not clean. Now, with the strict investigations going on, they happened to hit the muzzle of the gun. All along, it wasn't me who was supporting them, but my half-brother. Matthew said. There were just some project collaborations, and I can withdraw at any time. Don't worry. It won't affect me. Finally, I felt relieved. I submitted all the evidence I had collected over the years to the police, thanks to the fact that after Matthew took over the Williams family, he cut ties with those people cleanly. He was unimplicated on the day the Davis family completely collapsed. I carried a bouquet of flowers and took Matthew to the cemetery to visit my mother. In the photo on the tombstone, her smile was still so gentle, yet always tinged with sadness. She was a kind and gentle woman, and she truly loved my father. That's why she couldn't move on for all these years. Before she died, lying on the hospital bed, she held my hand and told me not to blame Serafina. She said, "Your sister isn't the biological blood of the Davis family. She must have had a hard time there. What she didn't know was that over the years, Serafina had been relying on belittling and humiliating her to curry favor with Juliet and gradually gain a foothold in the entire Davis family. From the day she was brought into the Davis family, she had started to rot. I gently stroked the photo on the tombstone with my fingertips and said, "Mom, no one will think you are at fault for that incident anymore. I have a great career now, and I also have a boyfriend." Matthew stood aside and softly corrected me. "Fiancé. Okay." Fiancé. I subconsciously twirled the silver ring on the ring finger of my left hand, which was a set with Matthew's. After going abroad that year, I hid it at the bottom of the suitcase. I thought I would never have the chance to wear it again in my life. I tidied up the bouquet in front of the tombstone, stood up, and bowed. When I turned around, Matthew was looking at me intently. "Aurora, go wait in the car outside first. I want to have a few words with Aunt I alone." The autumn night wind was chilly. I waited in the car for a long time before seeing Matthew come back. The black coat on him was damp with dew, making the lines of his cheekbones and jaw more distinct. I turned my face and asked him, "What did you say to my mom?" He started the car after a long while. He said, "I just said thank you to her for bringing you into this world. Otherwise, I would have died in the summer 5 years ago, at the lowest point of my life." When everything had settled down, I successfully became a full-time employee and got a small promotion. I started to independently handle interview tasks. This time, it was about a high school girl who had been bullied by rich kids at school for as long as a year and finally jumped off the school rooftop. Those people's families are rich and powerful, and no one dares to mess with them. The leader looked at me, hesitating. "If you don't want to take this, of course I will go." I took the file. Coincidentally, I'm working on a planning proposal for an advocacy campaign on the theme of bullying. I'll send it to you for review this afternoon. Rarely, now that Matthew was wealthy and powerful, since I'd had him as my backing. Of course I had to make use of it. This interview, along with the subsequent anti-bullying publicity campaign I planned, kept me busy for nearly half a month. I hardly had any time to meet Matthew. He sent 20 messages, and I could only manage to reply with an emoji while nibbling on bread and monitoring public sentiment at night. He said he had prepared a surprise for me and asked me to go home for sure. I pushed open the door. The night sky was full of twinkling stars in the steamy room. He propped himself up on the headboard, panting like a puppy as he looked at me. His eyes were sticky, lingering on me. "Aurora, you've been ignoring me for a long time." I stared at him for a long time. The decisive general manager Matthew even had a blush on the tips of his ears. Then I took off the camera strap and threw it to him. "Tie it up yourself." Because I had been running around outside all day. My voice was very hoarse. "I'll go take a shower first." Matthew was very obedient when I came out. Wiping my dripping hair, he had already arranged everything. Only a small lamp was left on by the bedside, and the moonlight flowed in like melted ice water. Even so, it still couldn't reduce the humid heat in the room by half. "Aurora, kiss me. You're too tense. Let me out a bit." Every word, mixed with his lustful eyes, was full of seductive meaning. By the time the tempest subsided, it was the early hours of the morning when the sky was turning white. I suddenly remembered something. Next month, I'm going on a business trip out of town for a very important interview. It's about a news story of a young girl in the mountains who has been repeatedly violated by the villagers for a long time. She walked alone in the mountains for a whole night before reaching the internet within the town to contact me. That place is quite backward, and local forces are intricately intertwined. It's estimated that it's not easy to find a way in, so I'll stay there for a longer period of time. His hand tightened on the protruding bones of my back. "There will be danger. So be it," I said inferently, turning over and sitting up to light a cigarette for myself. Seeing him staring at me intently, I comforted him a couple of times. "I'll try my best to protect myself. But this kind of thing is, after all, the mission and responsibility of us media workers." Matthew was silent for a moment. Then he suddenly said, "I'll go with you. But don't you have a very important contract to negotiate next week?" The young master interviewed today is the person in charge of the entire Williams family. Why? Actually, it's not really necessary. I tried to reason with him, but the words that hadn't come out yet were all blocked by Matthew's passionate kiss. The kiss went all the way down and stopped at my most sensitive neck. He was panting wetly. He said in a hoarse voice, "Because I am your most loyal guard. You just go ahead and realize your ideals. I will escort you."